All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar where we're going to be discussing opportunities for energy tech startups and innovators in Victoria. We're going to be discussing funding, program, and policy opportunities today. A little bit of housekeeping. As you join us in this virtual room, if you could rename yourself to your name, your company name, that would be really helpful for us. And if you feel comfortable having your camera on, we would really welcome that. You can hide stealth view if that's a bit distracting for you, but it's always a lot more energizing and engaging for our speakers to see all of your wonderful faces. Even if you're eating lunch, do not worry, that's completely fine. Please put your camera on, bring your lunch. So we also ask that you please stay on mute unless you're asking a question as part of our Q&A section, just because we're trying to minimize that background noise. And if you can also, actually, if you have a later version of Zoom, you might also be able to switch on closed captioning if that's helpful for you to follow along with this webinar. So to kick us off, I'd like to start by acknowledging that I am hosting and recording this webinar from the lens of the Wurundjeri people. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today, and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. My name is Audrey, and I'm going to be the host for today. I'm the Director of Impact at Climate Salad. Climate Salad is Australia's leading network in climate technology, and we are on a mission to help 1,000 Australian climate tech companies reach their fullest potential by 2030. We do that through a combination of programs, events, partnerships, and community support. We've also got Charlotte from our team on the call, and she'll be monitoring the chat, so don't hesitate to engage with us through there. We're really excited to be partnering with the Victorian Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Action, DEECA for short, to bring you this webinar. I won't do a big intro on DEECA because we have Vivek on the call, who's one of our panelists, who will do a 10 times better job at explaining what he and his team are leading on than I could ever do. But before we actually move on to the webinar, we did want to launch a poll just to get a sense of who's in this virtual room. So it's just going to be two very simple questions. The first one is around what type of organization you're representing today. And the second one is around where you're dialing in from. So this webinar is targeted at tech startups, energy tech startups and innovators, but we also know that there's so many other stakeholders that play a key role in supporting startups and innovators in Victoria. So we want to know if you're in the room. And we also would love to know where you're dialing in from. So a lot of the opportunities that are going to be shared with you today are targeted at Victorian-based companies. But if you're dialing in from interstate or even overseas, we'd love to know. Maybe you're considering moving to Victoria, which would be really exciting. So we'll give you a couple more, maybe 10 more seconds to fill out the poll, and then we'll publish the results to see who's here. All right, I reckon we can publish the results now. And if you haven't had a chance to input and you do want to, feel free to use the chat function at any point throughout this webinar to share with us where you're coming from, where you're dialing in from, and why you're here. As you can see here, there's quite a few startups and scale-ups in the room, a few people from government, a few from the investment space, corporate, couple of entrepreneurship support organizations, universities, and other. And mostly from Victoria, but still 19% from New South Wales, a few joining us from Queensland and WA. So that's great, really great to see. Awesome. So what I did want to share is that this is actually the first in a series of 3 webinars that we'll be hosting over the next 6 weeks. So the second webinar is really going to focus on engaging with industry. That's looking at the industry's digital energy innovation needs, what should startup be working on in that space, and how can we bridge the gap between incumbent needs and digital energy solutions. And then webinar 3, we're actually going to be focusing on consumer data rights for energy. So these are relatively new and they provide a framework for safe and secure data sharing. So we're going to do the 101 of consumer data rights, what those mean for energy tech startups, and also how they can improve the quality of energy products and services. So please keep an eye out on our social channels, especially LinkedIn, to register for those webinars. We'd absolutely love to see you there. And this is what's on our agenda for today. So it's pretty straightforward. We're going to have our panelists introduce themselves and their work. We've challenged each panelist to pull together a couple of slides to share a snapshot of what they can offer you, so that when we get to the Q&A in the panel, we can kind of dive below the surface into a little bit more of the detail. What we encourage you to do is, if you have questions bubble up as our panelists are speaking, please either put them straight into the chat or keep them on hand so that you can, when we get to the Q&A, we can actually make sure that we answer them. And before we actually get, before I hand over to actual speakers, we actually have one more poll that we would love to launch, which Charlotte is going to launch in a second. We'd really love to know what you're hoping to learn from this webinar and potentially future ones as well. So the poll is just one simple question. It looks at what would help your energy startup the most out of these categories. And if you are another stakeholder, you're not a founder, you're not a startup yourself, again, you're probably supporting startups, you're probably investing in startups. So what have you seen as the key needs, and what would you want to learn more about to be able to better invest or support the startups that you are currently working with? So we'll give that a couple of seconds as well, because I know there's a few more options to read through. Great. All right, so just publishing the results for you. So it looks like there's interest across the board in all of these topics, which is really great to see. A lot of them will feature in the speakers' presentations today and the conversations we're going to have. But as you could see as well, we do have 2 upcoming webinars, and between all of us who are speaking today have a lot of resources and links that we'll be sharing as well across all of those categories. So it's great to see that there's interest across the board, because we'll be talking about all of this today. Okay, and so these are wonderful speakers. We've got Vivek Kotak from DEECA, Grace Bird from Breakthrough Victoria, and Peter Goldsworthy from Launchvik. So Vivek is going to kick us off in terms of the introductions and zoom out and provide us some context for what Victoria is doing more broadly in the space before going into the specific opportunities to engage with DEECA. Then Grace is going to talk to us about some funding opportunities across the whole funding lifecycle for ventures through Breakthrough Victoria's $2 billion fund. And then Peter is going to round out the introductions, sharing the powerful programs that Launchvik is supporting, funding, and leading to support startups and scale up. So I'm now going to pass on the virtual microphone to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Yeah, so I'm representing the Energy Group today, and Audrey, I think we can just jump straight into the next slide. This is a very busy slide, admittedly, so I'm not going to go through any of it really, because I think slides are going to be available, and this information is also publicly available at the moment. The one thing I'm going to say, firstly, is that obviously we've got to work cut out in delivering these ambitious targets. But secondly is that we are looking to ramp up these ambitions. So at the moment we do have an intention to legislate and increase the targets to 65% by 2030 and 95% by 2035, which will actually take us to net zero emissions by 2045. The other thing just to note, as you can see, is that we are taking very much an approach around investing in a mix of new tech. That's not just government, but also encouraging private investment into this new tech. And we have targets for those as well. Again, this is all publicly available if you want to have a look at that. But just to set the context of what's happening at that level. Thanks. Next slide, please, Audrey. Okay, so now I'm going to go more into why we are setting out to engage with the energy tech startup space. So with all this new energy technology coming in and online into the grid, we're seeing the need for more software-driven, more data-driven solutions. And we think that the Victorian state has some distinct advantages in leading and capitalising on this sort of what we call the digital energy transformation. So Firstly, Victoria is the only jurisdiction in the country that has 99% smart meter penetration. So essentially there is a wealth of granular energy use data because of this infrastructure. And adding to that, we do now have a national open data initiative called the Consumer Data Right for Energy. As Audrey has mentioned, that is going to be expanded on in another webinar, so I won't go into the detail of that. But just to say that it does open up the access to the smart metering data even more, including third parties. So beyond that, we also have in Victoria the Victorian initiative called the Centre for New Energy Technologies, or C4NET, which has been providing data access services through their relationships with distribution and network service providers, and again, through providing access services to smart meter data. So beyond that, of course, you know, we already have the capability coming out of universities to tap into, and also not to mention the significant government investment through Breakthrough Victoria and, you know, the support that LaunchVic provides. So I'll leave that for Grace and Pete to touch on. And really, with all of this, we thought that it is worth pursuing this idea of developing a digital energy economy program in Victoria, firstly, to understand the gaps and barriers for energy tech startups at the moment, and trying to understand what our role is improving or at least addressing those barriers. You know, the very first step we're doing is this: we're trying to increase cross collaboration in the sector, trying to bring in different players in to solve these problems for us. So this being the very first step in terms of a cross collaboration forum and webinars that we have right now. But we're also looking to deliver two other initiatives. The second one being the Civic Labs initiative. I'm not going to take Pete's thunder again. He can explain what that's about, but we are collaborating with him. And we're also working internally on piloting a small grant fund that's specifically targeted for startups to take perhaps their prototypes or minimum viable products to something into the market for full commercialization. So watch that space, keep your ears peeled, and you know, keep your eyes on the channels that you normally get your information from. Next slide, please. Thanks, Audrey. Okay, now there's a lot going on here, like I said. I'm just going to touch on these focus areas. This is not exhaustive, but we do believe these are the opportunities, given that this is a focus area for DEECA at the moment. The first one is really the integration of distributed energy resources into the grid. We're pushing for solar PV, batteries and EVs to be taken up at scale. And with that becomes the challenge of unlocking the true value of all these three things within a household, within a business, by better integrating them and helping them facilitate in a more dynamic energy grid as well. For example, through virtual power plants, and I'm happy to chat about that later. The second thing that we're really turning our attention to is flexible demand. So that's where we're looking to you know, have household and commercial and industrial consumers actively shedding or shifting their demand and really providing incentives to do so. And the opportunity really here is to provide consumers, particularly those with large energy needs, with products and services that can automate energy use and control of appliances. And finally, the electrification of households and businesses. So this one's going to be pretty big and quite topical at the moment. Gas prices are in the news cycle at the moment. They're going through the roof. And we have a gas substitution roadmap that was recently released. And part of that is really the electrification of households and businesses. So really providing incentives for consumers to replace gas appliances with smart and efficient electrical appliances, such as, you know, reverse cycle air conditioners, electric heat pump, hot water systems. And really the opportunity here is that we've got more of these smart electrical appliances in homes and businesses, and there will be a need for, you know, energy tech startups to provide opportunities to these consumers to optimize energy use and also really utilize more cheap and clean energy and, you know, safeguard ourselves from such gas price shocks at the moment. And I think I've got one more slide. Thanks, Audrey. Yeah, all right. Now, these are the current and future grant opportunities as well at DEECA at the moment. The first is quite a mouthful: zero emissions vehicles, emerging technologies. I'm not going to say that quickly, but really this fund is currently open. It's targeting pre-commercial electric vehicle charging technologies. So any of you out there kind of working on software and hardware technologies, that fit this category. It's worth having a look at because the opportunity, 3 million plus in grants available with no maximum or minimum grant allocation. And okay, I can already see the question there. And also neighbourhood battery initiatives. This is the round one of this fund has actually just recently concluded. It was supporting a range of neighbourhood battery models in Victoria from feasibility to implementation. From that, we funded 16 projects under 2 streams of feasibility and implementation. And I'm sure for those that have tuned in, there is an election commitment now to deliver 100 new neighbourhood batteries. So certainly this program will be a vehicle to deliver that. And yeah, we keep your eyes peeled on that opportunity when it kicks in. So I think that's me. Sorry for going so quickly, but happy to talk about any of this during a Q&A. Passing on to Grace.
Thanks, Vivek. Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Bird. I'm the Director of Early Stage Investment at Breakthrough Victoria. Thanks for joining the webinar. Excited to talk to you all about what we're doing. Hopefully some of you are aware of Breakthrough Victoria. So this will be a bit of a nutshell overview and similar to Vivek, really happy to answer questions at the end and absolutely happy for people to reach out to us. Effectively, we're the funds management company. So we're a state government initiative announced in the November 2020 budget. And then spun up into an independent funds management company, and we're responsible for managing the $2 billion Breakthrough Victoria Fund. So what that actually means, effectively, you can think of us like any other VC or growth capital fund. So we're an investment firm, we don't do grants, and we're investing across 5 key sectors, which you can see on the bottom left. Clean economy obviously being the most relevant for this discussion. There's a few reasons. Obviously, we're backed by the state government and there's clearly policy priorities around clean economy initiatives, as you've heard from Vivek. But we also think from an investment perspective, it's a really exciting space. Ultimately, we're investing on behalf of the taxpayer, so there's some exciting financial returns to realise there, but there's also some really exciting economic growth opportunities in that space. So we invest at every stage of growth. I'm responsible for more sort of early stage investment, pre-seed and venture capital. These check sizes are very rough. Basically, there isn't a typical check size. And really our value proposition to startups is that we're patient long-term capital. So why we were conceived is really to help commercialise great innovations in Victoria. You know, we know that we've got wonderful research here. We've got a really exciting and growing startup ecosystem thanks to all the work that LaunchVic's doing, and there's definitely an opportunity to kind of continue to bolster that, particularly in deep tech areas. So that was really sort of the genesis of why we conceived. We want to be able to follow on as we go with our portfolio companies as they grow to really see those businesses scale in Victoria. It's also worth mentioning, I just want to acknowledge my colleague who's not on the call, but Phil Gurney. We have sector specialists in the team as well. Obviously, some of the things that we're investing in is quite deep tech. So we work with some technical leads who work with my team and our broader investment team on running these deals through. We're also quite new, so I have a lot of empathy for the startup journey. We've been operating for about, I think probably since early 2021. I've been with the team for about 9 months and I think I'm the second contracted employee. But we've done a few investments in the clean economy space, which I'm happy to talk to in questions or during the panel discussion. So I'll wrap it up there and I'll throw over to Pete.
Thank you, Grace. So yeah, LaunchVic, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so LaunchVic and my role as GM of startups is really to support founders through their whole life cycle. And how we do that is interventions with programs that we either support through funding or that we deliver ourselves. So we really see that, that early stage journey needs a lot of support from going from 0 to 1. And we also have programs that support later stage, which if we go to the next slide. I wanted to sort of touch on, before I get into that, why energy tech, and Vivek already sort of touched on it a bit, so did Grace. But we see it more from the people side, is that the talent in, not only do you need a great founding team, but you need to be able to hire people who can support your startup. And obviously, with the unis and also just the background in technology and medtech. There's a lot of crossover that can move across, for instance, ag, which has a lot of climate, also and energy. So you can go across from that sector and go into clean economy. So smart data going live, as Vivek already said, and just that global mandate is a really strong push. And you always, as a founder, want to be doing something where the funds are going to, and Grace already shared why they have a mandate for it. Next slide. These are the programs, just a sort of a snapshot. We have a lot of other programs. We have 11 pre-accelerators in total that we fund. And so I sort of group it as idea to early stage, established startups, and then scale ups. I'm going to zoom in on the 2 programs that we actually run ourselves. And so Civic Labs, which Vivek mentioned, we had a kickoff event last night, 10 great startups. We had 100 EOIs come through on that program in a sector which only had around 17 established startups in digital energy. And so the challenge was set, Vivek's team set a challenge of, how might a startup help customers access more clean and affordable energy, which is very topical. And that resonated with startup founders, and how we really help them go from idea to early stage, hopefully to scale up a lot faster. Is we're bringing in commercial mentors, including startup mentors, but also energy experts, people that those startups would probably struggle to get in front of, whether that be in policy or the voice of the customer, from retailers or distributors. That if you reached out to on LinkedIn, you've probably got a very low hit rate of getting a response. And that's what we sort of see as our superpower as Launchpic, is being able to convene people who can fast track your growth cycle. And then the other one, the scale up program 30 by 30, we would love to see some energy tech companies move through to 30 by 30. That is a program exclusively for companies that have raised their Series A or Series B, have around 50 employees, and are going through that cycle where they've just raised that money and their investors have told them grow at all costs. And so that is a program that helps out in HR, ops, and finance, and it really helps them to upskill so that they can keep up with that pace of growth. So happy if any founders on this call feel like they're getting close to that stage, would be happy to talk to them about that too. Thank you, Audrey.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing now because we'll go into questions, including I do have a couple of questions myself as part of this kind of panel discussion, but we really want to make sure that we get around to everyone who's on this call if you do have questions as well. So keep populating them through the chat. I'll just ask one of my panel questions and then we'll revisit the chat. Just again, we want to make sure that we're allowing enough time for everyone to get the answers to the questions that they have. So thank you again, Vivek, Grace, and Peter. I know it was quite the challenge to try and sum up the depth and breadth of opportunities that each of your organization offers in just a few slides. So we really appreciate that. We will be sharing the slides, recording, and some more links to resources that we've been chatting about after this webinar as part of the thank you email from Humanitix. So you will get all of this content as well in case you need to circle back to it or you want to forward it on to someone that you think could find this interesting. So my question is, building on what you shared, I guess I'm selfishly someone who loves to understand more tangibly how these offerings, programs, and policies benefit founders. So I'd love some real world examples. I'd love to hear real stories of energy tech companies or innovators who have engaged with and benefited from your programs, funding, and or policies, and how they've engaged with you, and then what were the actual outcomes that were achieved. So I might start with Grace and throw it over to you if you have one.
Yeah, totally. So I'll kind of maybe zoom out to keep it general, and then go into a bit more detail. And again, happy to answer questions. For instance, last year when we were fairly new, I worked on a deal. So we're literally, as I said, we're investing in companies. So often they're founders that have come through Launchpic programs or in the ecosystem, or looking to move to Victoria. There's effectively what we're looking for is quite proprietary innovation and some tie and economic outcome for the state in terms of like they're growing and scaling here. So one example, which you can also read about on our website, and there was some, he's sort of got a lot of coverage now, is a company called Kite Magnetics, which is an electric aviation company. Obviously, clean economy for us encompasses a lot of things, energy tech, digital energy economy kind of initiatives and that sort of piece, but there's also sort of synthetic biology and there's a huge scope. So this particular startup, Kite Magnetics, is electric aviation. The founder, Richard, came to us, I think it was probably April last year, and he's effectively spun out of Monash with a proprietary nanocrystalline magnetic material that makes electric motors more efficient, and so they can go further. They're lighter, more efficient, they can go further. So that was really interesting. We went through a full DD process with Richard. We sort of thought the material that he's developed and the prototype he'd then built for an electric aviation use case was interesting. So we followed that through to deep due diligence. There are other couple of investors in the space. So Investable led the round. Some of you on the call might be familiar with them, given they've got a clean tech fund. Possible Ventures similarly was involved in that deal. We went through due diligence and took it to our investment committee, and were able to support Richard with his seed raise. And then ongoing from that, we still supported, his hiring, and we're trying to help him, grow and scale and get visibility, and we'll connect him into government when he needs it, or globally. Hopefully at that point when he's scaling globally, we can leverage, government trade offices and that sort of thing. But effectively, that's probably in line with a typical investment process. We followed other investors, and it probably took about 2 months. And so, yeah, we went through DD like anyone else, and it was a really exciting, very, very early stage, prototype stage technology. But Richard's if anyone's met him on the call, he's a really awesome founder, really had clear milestones that he was going to hit, was able to articulate why, we were sort of like, how are you going from this material to developing an electric aviation company building these motors? Like, that's a pretty big stretch, but he was very clear on what he was trying to achieve, very clear in the milestones that he needed to hit. So it was a really exciting proposition for the state. And we hope that he can grow and scale and sort of build his company from Victoria.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And you kind of shared in there, obviously, there's a few different ways that people can come and engage with your fund in terms of making their presence and their work and prototypes known. But you did mention in there, and that's kind of nice link to potentially Peter, when your kind of story, real world example is programs as well. So the link to programs and very much making sure that you've got those partnerships in place so that ventures can get that support and then access that investment through Breakthrough Victoria. So Peter, wondering if you can share a bit of a real world story with us.
Yeah, sure. So Amber Electric went through StartMate. It would have been around 3 cohorts ago. Anyone who's familiar with the StartMate accelerator, they match you up with a mentor and they help you, obviously, trying to accelerate your growth. And so then after that, they won the Governor's Startup Award, the Victorian Startup Governors Award for the best startup in Victoria. Since then, they've gone on to raise Series B from Square, Peg, and RMA. That came out in the news late last year. And just beyond that, and this is the thing about the Victorian ecosystem that's so great, is that, no matter how small or how big you get, is that people are willing to give back to the ecosystem. And so Dan and Chris, the founders, they're always willing to, give up time for, earlier stage companies. They were at our Civic Digital Energy Challenge launch. Dan spoke and was a keynote there. And it's just, they continue to support moving forward. So we hope to see everyone on this call who's a founder who makes it big also does the same thing.
Awesome. And yes, shout out to Raj, who is one of our Climate Salad members, but also in the current cohort of StartMate. So a link there as well. Thank you for that, Peter. And Vivek, for you, I guess it's not so much, I know that you might be exploring a bit of funding through the grants and also programs, but I guess zooming out a little bit, would love to know if there's a bit of an example around how the government has been able to create new markets and opportunities for digital energy technology in the space.
Yeah, it's a good question, and kind of going through the progression stages, I think we probably interact with startups that are more at the scale up stage, and I think that was a question in the chat as well around when is a good time to interact with some of these programs. Probably at that stage where you've got a proven technology around the market and you are trying to gain some traction. So I think a really good one would be, I'm going to take the example of Neighbourhood Battery Initiative, which I just spoke about. One of the 16 projects was supported by I would say now startup / scale up now, which is Redgrid. And they were part of a conglomerate between a city council, United Energy, being a distribution and network service provider. And of course, DELP as the funder. And then we also had Monash University and Mervac. So, you know, they sort of participated in the feasibility stream, you know, providing a study around peer-to-peer trading and community participation in a community sort of battery scenario. And, you know, a lot of those learnings are now going to be taken back, and the next phase of the program really will take into consideration some of the findings of that. And having a scale up really participate in that type of feasibility study stage really does then set them up to be able to be in a good position to apply for further funding to implement a project. So I think that's an example where we've seen startups come through. You know, I think the key thing here is really that it needs to be something that can be then deployed into the market and a real world scenario. So very much at that stage where, you know, it is something that's proven. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. I'm aware that we've had quite a few questions come through the chat, and yes, whilst I was mentioning, please throw it in the chat. We do love, in terms of you and the speakers, engaging with everyone on the call. So we'd encourage you, if you are open to coming off or putting your virtual hand up and coming off mute to ask your questions during the Q&A, we'd really love that. But given there are a few questions coming through, before I continue with my questions, because I could come up with a lot of them, I might see, Charlotte, you've been monitoring the chat. Are there, we see Raj has put her virtual hand up. So we might go over to Raj, and then we'll go through the chat and circle back to everyone who had their hand up as well.
Thank you. I just had a question. I think I might have met with you, Grace, last year. Did I meet with you or not? I met with someone in your team. Maybe. No. Yeah. And I think, you know, I think you just before, as you were saying, you have invested in a company that spun out of a university. Now, I think in Australia, startups really struggle because if you're not from a university or a, you know, CSIRO, we find it hard to get funding, especially in this early stage. And there's a very big gap for startups. Now, me personally, I'm the founder of Capture, and we've developed carbon capture and storage technology. So we're the first company in the world to focus on small scale emissions, and our filter is very affordable. So it costs, for example, between $2,000 to $5,000, and it's a real solution that we can stop emissions immediately. So we can, you know, retrofit our filter to a diesel generator, and we can stop emissions, you know, carbon entering the atmosphere. Anyway, so what I was going to say, like, I just got into the StartMate cohort, which has now opened the doors for me, but there's so many other amazing technologies out there, and founders are struggling to get funding or someone opening the door for them. And, you know, they might really help Australia. Like, so.
Oh, am I frozen?
Oh no, I think she's frozen. Oh, she was getting to the question.
I can maybe, just for the benefit of the group, address, you know, I guess with Breakthrough as well, and I'm sure there might be founders who have reached out to us before, and I think Raj, I think I remember her name, and I think one of my colleagues met with Raj, but Breakthrough ultimately is an investment fund, and so while we do exist, we want to commercialize these early stage businesses, we do still assess everything like a VC would. We have a bit of a different lens maybe than a pure VC, because we're trying to create outcomes for the state, and we're trying to balance it with financial returns and impact outcomes as well. So we do take a sort of more blended approach, but at the end of the day, we are making investment decisions, and it's probably less like a grant approach, I would just flag. So I saw a question in the chat and I've answered it, but we're always open, so you can always contact us, and, you know, often we'll say, you know, we don't think you're quite ready for our investment yet, or we might not have conviction at this time, but it might be a comeback when you hit these kind of milestones. So we still weigh up investment opportunities, and ultimately we want to see great companies scale. I just wanted to flag that, you know, for instance, Richard was incredibly early. We don't just fund, my role specifically is not working with the universities. I have a counterpart, Laxmi, who many of you might know, who specifically works with spin-out companies. I worked on the Kite deal because she wasn't here at the time. But my role specifically is working with startups that haven't got affiliation with universities and whatnot as well. So we definitely focused on kind of trying to cover the ecosystem. And yeah, hopefully that helps address some of Raj's point, even though I know she didn't finish it.
Thank you, Grace. We'll see if she comes back on, and then we'll kind of see if she had a question that was a little bit broader than that, but thank you for answering that. Lisa, would you want to come off mute?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the session too. It's really helpful. I'm the founder and CEO of Verifier, and we're one of the data recipients for the consumer data right. And we're very much scale up end of things. My question was more about Vic government and those subsidies and being a buyer from scale ups, because I guess it's for companies at our stage, what we actually need is customers. And it'd be really interested to know what work is being done to work with scale ups in those programs, like the 700,000 solar subsidies, or targets for that, and the EVs. And is there a way or a corridor of activity about getting companies like ourselves based in Melbourne into those programs?
Cool. I think that one's for me, right? So, look, it's a really good question, and it's something that we've been grappling as well internally as to how, our programs can focus on, scale ups and startups that, that can fill in those gaps that we need, supply gaps. Sometimes they can't, and that's just the reality of the way things are. But certainly, the example that I gave with Red Grid being a key player in that enabled battery initiative is a really good example. And there are others such as that that have sort of, for instance, participated in our Victorian Energy Upgrade Scheme, where they have had a piece of technology, in-home displays, for instance, which, was then taken up at scale, and then other players, also opening the doors for other players to get in. So there are ways to do it. I think the two things that I would say there is to really get accredited. So, become an accredited provider is your first pathway into being considered. I think with the Solar Homes program, they focus on the Clean Energy Council accreditation. And something like that then gives us assurance that we're not, we do have to understand our own risks with, our stakeholders. And of course, it might come back, badly. So we want to make sure that that accreditation is something.
So just to interrupt, I mean, our issue is we're already accredited for the consumer data, right?
Sure.
We work with some of the biggest companies in the country, but our problem is more on the procurement end. We don't even know things are coming up, and it's very hard, as you would appreciate, for smaller companies to get into those big panels and all of that.
No, absolutely. And that is fair. And I think in terms of knowledge as well, I think this is very much our first step of communicating to this particular sector in this way and highlighting the types of programs that are coming up. So certainly we want to try and make an effort and make sure that we do that. I totally get that, sometimes these programs don't get out to to yourselves unless you come to this forum. And secondly, certainly I think, we do have a business and industry engagement sort of contact details. So I would definitely encourage that you get in touch with them, because at the very least, they're there to sort of try and solve some of these problems. As a scale up, they're quite happy to sort of be able to put you in touch with that. So we do have a link around that and an email address that you can reach out to. So, we do want to promote this a little bit more, in terms of the right types of people like yourself. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thanks. I'll look at those links. That's great.
Thanks, Lisa.
We'll include them as part of that slide deck that we send afterwards. And Lisa, those kinds of questions are really important, because part of what we're doing through this webinar, but also the broader initiative, is to try to get a better understanding of those structural barriers, whether that's procurement, whether that's regulatory, to really then incorporate that back into DEECA's kind of energy policy and program. So it's useful, and we recognize that those are big procurement and government procurement and corporate procurement have always been big challenges. So thank you for that. Sean, over to you.
Audrey, before we go to Sean, could I just add one more part to that question? We have a service called the Government Liaison Service, which is a it's a free service, and it's one of our team members who basically look not just related to energy, to any sort of we realise that VicGov is a little bit of a slow mover compared to other jurisdictions. So we created this service so that you come to us. Obviously, there's a bit of a qualifying to make sure you are the scale up, the right size, and that you're ready to be, for the government to procure from you. And then we set the introductions and we work behind the scenes to make sure you get in front of a decision maker, because there's a whole bunch of meetings that occur that is just not with someone who actually can even sign a bit of paper. So we get rid of that clutter. And yeah, so reach out and we can chat more about that.
Lovely, thanks.
Thanks for that, Peter. Sean, over to you.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
So I guess there's a question for Vivek. Back when you put up the slides around the focus areas of the Victoria government had, I noticed there wasn't any mention of carbon capture technology. And I guess I was thinking that because Raj was on the call as well. And I guess by extension, don't want to steal Sam's thunder because he's got his hand up as well, Sam from Connery, is that there's a lot of focus on A, measurement, B, software, but a lot of what we would also need is deep tech capability, manufacturing capability. So I'm wondering if there is any specific incentive in the works for that as well, or if it's TBD.
Thanks, Sean. I'll try the first curly one to go with. So in terms of carbon capture storage, it isn't part of the mix, obviously, as you pointed out. And I think our focus is really about renewable energy and energy efficiency first. And certainly that's been a priority the whole time. So yeah, at the moment, would say that it's definitely not being considered. There could be other parts of government that are, but within DEECA Energy, we are focusing on just meeting those renewable energy targets, and that's a big enough task at the moment for us to do. So yeah. To your second question, I think, so if I get that right, you mean assistance in terms of, are you saying grant assistance in terms of, you're talking about like capital for deep technology or manufacturing, or?
Capital, manufacturing expertise, etc. because Australia once had a manufacturing base, it doesn't any longer. Yeah. And in order to meet all of these targets, we're probably going to have to build some things, hypothetically speaking. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I think, and it is something that, is a bit of a TBD at the moment. We are so early in our sort of exploratory phase of thinking about what are the things that we can provide for support. Like I mentioned, there was this idea around providing a targeted grant, and I can't go into too much detail about it, but it will assist in terms of getting grant funding for specifically further developing prototype or an MVP. At the moment, our focus is on digital energy, given the program is very much focused on that. So it should have some sort of software element to it. That's as much as I can go into at the moment. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got two Sams with their hands up. The first one on my screen is Sam from solvingzero.com. You wanted to ask your question?
Yeah, this is for Vivek as well, in a similar train of thought. You mentioned on one of your slides that you had grants open for batteries and EV charging. Do you have any grants on your roadmap for CDR energy endpoints or utilizing CDR energy endpoints?
Sam, that's a great question. And yeah, like I said, keep your ears peeled. Yeah, because that is certainly what we want to see. And, to my reference around digital solutions. So yeah, certainly that's what we want to see, an uptake of something like CDR so that, it can be utilized in the way it should be, especially for those third-party providers, that will really make a huge difference, you know. So, I mean, I can give one example of a startup that I heard about the other day that's really jumped on the opportunity of CDR, and it is Bill Hero, if anyone knows of them. They jumped on the sort of the product reference data that was just provided publicly through CDR, and that has just been a game changer for them straight away. So, and we love to hear stories like that. So, yeah, definitely look out for that opportunity in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Sam, other Sam Ringwald, over to you.
Thank you, and thanks, Sean, for the shout out about manufacturing. And Grace, just to not leave you out, you know what I want. But for Vivek and for Peter, I guess probably for both of you to some regard, what do you do about getting a pipeline of information? So, like, spurring the thought around the neighborhood batteries, for example, obviously that at the moment is looking at long duration energy storage as energy, you know, batteries and so on. I mean, if you were to consider something like thermal energy storage for the neighborhoods, you know, would that fit into that program? Or if not, you know, what could we do? How can we facilitate conversations so that we're flagging upcoming technology that we're working on, deep tech, that's, you know, some time out, so that it's in the conversations, it's in the thinking, it's in the like programs, it's in the exploration that's coming down the track?
I'll have, yeah, so look, I think the business and industry engagement team would be the first protocol to have those types of conversations. They certainly have quite a breadth of knowledge, and my team, which is the emerging energy technologies, do look at those sort of newer, like emerging technologies coming into the foray. So I just happen to be in the digital side, but we certainly have been thinking about things like thermal energy storage and how they can play a role in the mix. But having said, you know, we can't be the entire wealth of knowledge, so we would love that type of engagement. So especially when you come through a BIE team, then one of us can come along and discuss further the sort of the technology itself and kind of put it on our radars, because yeah, certainly it's going to, as I've said, require a mix of technologies for us to get there, and we definitely need to get there. So,
and what's the best channel into those teams?
Yeah, so there'll be a link shared. There'll be an email address shared. So if you can hit that up, and certainly there's a team of 4 that are looking out for those emails. So thanks, Sam. Peter, as well.
No, I think the best channel is what is Vivek and what Vivek described. Although I do hope there are further civic challenges, and then, you know, frontier technologies that are emerging, you know, might be part of the next challenge. So maybe that will be a pathway in the future too.
Great. Welcome back, Raj. You froze on us just before your juicy question, so please finish that one.
Yeah. Sorry if I sound a bit annoying to you guys, but I just want to get my frustrations out there as well, so you guys understand how founders feel that do have innovative technologies and need your support. But I think it's important to stay open-minded as well, because there are breakthrough technologies coming out that can help decarbonize and, you know, reach net zero sooner for Australia. And as I was saying earlier, so for example, with our technology, traditionally carbon capture is very expensive, and, you know, you need to store the CO2 underground once it's captured. And with our technology, you basically capture the CO2 and you can pour it directly into soil. So it's similar to biochar. So it's a major breakthrough globally. And I feel like in Australia, we just kind of have to bypass government and all that help, because, you know, it seems like you're just supporting technologies coming from university or something that's not in the too hard basket. But we kind of need you guys to be open-minded and leave room for different technologies that are going to make a big impact. And for example, with our technology, our first customer is actually the Victorian government. So we are going to use one of their sites and, you know, you set up a pilot scale demonstration. And while that's happening, I feel like there's a big disconnect, because you know, you guys are working on this and not kind of supporting carbon capture, but the Victorian government sites that are using diesel generators are desperate to decarbonize and very welcoming our solution. So you kind of need to, everyone needs to be on the same page, I think, as well. And that's why we're here today. But, you know, yeah, but thank you. That's what I had to say. Yeah.
Thanks, Raj. And, you know, there's we mentioned there's a few steps to this process as well, and there's going to be other forums to be able to, again, talk about a lot of these challenges that different startups and innovators are experiencing and really trying to address them, whether that was when we were talking about before procurement, etc. So thanks for sharing. We probably have, time for the two last questions from Joe and Christos. So Joe, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My question's for Grace. It's great that you guys are considering the social and environmental impacts as well. And I was just sort of wondering how you weigh that up with the commercial side of things, and was also wondering how do you include or consider global impacts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question, Joe. Where, as I sort of said at the start, so how we kind of think about investments. You know, every investment, every company, every capital raise looks different. And I noted that, you know, and maybe perhaps for pre-seed down the track, we'll get something more structured that's kind of in line with what some of the other VCs and accelerators and things do. But on the whole, every piece looks different, every sector is different, and the impacts are kind of different across the board. So we're actually working, as I said, we're fairly new in our operations, and we're sort of scaling our team as well. So we're working on kind of a more robust framework, particularly around that ESG piece and like what sort of impact investor we want to be and how that all comes together from sort of an evaluation perspective. At the moment, we're looking at it more generally, you know, when we're looking at investment opportunities in our team, obviously we consider the financial side, we kind of consider whether there's a connection to the state, and is the you know, if it's a company in New South Wales that has no intention to move to Victoria or do anything in the state apart from sell here, which is most of the world, you know, that's a bit hard for us to justify with taxpayer dollars. But if there's a company that's growing from Victoria and looking to scale globally, you know, that absolutely fits the mandate. On the impact front, absolutely, we're looking at global impacts. So certainly, you know, for instance, and this is drawing on a health and life sciences example, we want to see what the impact is locally for sure. Sear Medical, that some of you would know, for instance, they're quite scaled. So just in terms of an impact perspective, but they've helped, you know, 10,000 patients in Australia and a significant portion in Victoria. And so we can kind of like help tell that story about the local benefit. But absolutely, we're looking at startups and companies that have a global impact for sure. You know, really, I guess it's about taking these things to the world from Victoria. And as I'm sure, you know, a lot of you understand, we're on the journey as well, but you know, a lot of companies have to go overseas, particularly in deep tech. Our deep tech ecosystem is still emerging. And so really we want to kind of create that ecosystem here. And we're one of many, you know, to Raj's point, we're one of many players in the ecosystem. And hopefully, you know, I think in 10 years, we've got a really exciting opportunity to kind of really bolster Victoria's economy and kind of like create the new wave of kind of all these great companies that can set up here and create the environment alongside Vivek and the broader government, and you know what the team at LaunchVic are doing. I think there's a really good kind of economic development piece here. Sorry, that was a really broad answer, but the short of it is, no, we don't have like a seamless impact measurement, but it's coming.
Okay, thanks.
All right, time for one more. We have a couple of minutes left. Christos, over to you.
Thank you kindly. Greetings to everyone. This is an excellent initiative by Breakthrough Victoria, connecting us all and bringing us together. I have a question regarding on our technology. Since it's derived from overseas, we've been told off the record, behind the scenes, that because it is derived from overseas, that it won't have any merits on commercializing it in Victoria. I put forward as a question, as an answer to that we actually hold an exclusive distribution agreement for our technology and have manufacturing rights where we can build and fabricate this technology, which is based on converting waste streams, woody waste streams and agricultural residues into 24/7 renewable electricity and hydrogen production, addressing a lot of the issues that currently we are facing with the issues of hydrogen production through other renewables. So my question over here is, my question is based on an answer that I got yesterday from the Australian Hydrogen Council when the Australian government and the Dutch government signed an MOU to develop and promote hydrogen supply chains via Australia to Europe. So I was wondering, because we have already submitted our application to Breakthrough Victoria, we haven't heard anything from them the last 2 months. I was wondering if this is still the case, as we were given an answer of like, because our technology is derived from overseas, it won't have any merit. So I'd really like to put this forward and have an answer onto this, if it's possible, please.
Sure, Christos. First of all, apologies for the delay. As I sort of said, we're still a small and growing team, and with the $2 billion fund, we get quite a volume of applications that we're trying to get faster at, but we're still building that muscle. So apologies on that front first off. And happy to have a look. A bit hard to kind of give you the full context without having a proper look at the proposal and the tech and kind of the situation, but obviously happy to follow it up off the call. Perhaps if you just could pop your email and the company name in the chat, I can have a look offline and flick you a note just to give you a status update. But yeah, I guess we'd have to have a look at it in a kind of broader context with all the information, I think, but we can definitely do that for you.
Thank you very much for your answer. Thank you. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you. Well, 2 minutes left. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. I can see that people have been putting their email through chat, which we're just capturing. You will also get a quick pop-up when you end the call where you can put your details again if you haven't had a chance to put them through chat, or if you want to put them again, just so that we can provide them with the speakers if you did want to receive information about everything we've spoken about today. But a big thank you to our 3 speakers for taking the time to be here and for more generally driving these important initiatives to support energy tech startups and innovators out of Victoria. And a big thank you to all of you as well for attending and participating in this webinar. It's been really great to get all of you and all of your questions over this Q&A session. Just a reminder that we do also have 2 more upcoming webinars, so please keep an eye out for those if you're interested in the topics that we mentioned. And yeah, just thank you for being here. Thank you to our speakers again, and wishing you a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks,
and
everyone.
just before you go, I would love a group selfie where you smile and, you know, of course. So come off camera, don't be shy, and have a big smile. Wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Thursdays. Thanks for joining.
Thanks all. See you. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Hi, Charlotte. Ada. Hello?
Oh,
I can't hear you.
Charlotte, you're on mute. Maybe we can stop the recording as well. I'm just thinking you've